righty. All righty, folks. We're streaming.
Hang on. I want to know whether anybody sees it.
Now it's live
I
on.
see it. I got it. I see it.
I see it.
You even got a
All right,
notification.
so we're streaming. We're about to start.
No, we're not
show.
starting because
We're gonna.
if I
start
click
in a minute.
OK, then I won't be on the show. So let me clear this mandatory patch from Salesforce.
Okay.
He said loudly on the live stream.
Starting a watch party now, people. Yes, no?
I've lost the option to do when I do share more, watch party is no longer an option.
Really?
You know, it said that for me too, but then it came up like moments later after I sort of ignored it.
I
So
think
now I have a watch party started.
I think
Okay, how are we doing now,
Keith
Steve?
is being politically tagged
How are we doing now?
with a warning.
There you go. I got watch party going here, so.
Go ahead, Tina. All right, quiet, please.
Okay. All right, and we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, and
Hi. It's election day.
yay!
I'm Steve Gilmore, and this is the Gilmore Gang. Joining us from all across the universe is in London, Frank Radis. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you, and hello to all you crazy people in America.
And what about it?
Nothing, just nothing going on. Nothing.
I just need time
We don't see it over here as a very big story. Not.
Oh,
Okay. Also joining us, not from London, but he's from there, right? Is Keith Tier.
You know, as a proud Yorkshireman, I hate London. We had wars with those people.
ooh.
Okay, well, we'll get into that after the election's over.
Actually, I'm lying. I love London, but I'm not from there. I'm from Scarborough.
As in
Oh,
Scarborough.
do you know Joe? Is Joe a good friend of yours?
Joe Scarborough, yeah, very good friend. I see.
Only a fair friend.
He and I interact every morning, actually.
Yes, me too. So we must be interacting together.
Yeah,
How's that going, the interaction? You wave and he doesn't wave back, right?
correct. It's
Oh.
it's old-fashioned TV. Unlike now, where you wave at me and I can wave back, because we're not old-fashioned TV.
Okay, stop waving.
You know, Joe's a guitar player in a band in
He
New
is.
York.
He's
Yeah,
a singer
he
as
is.
well. He sings.
And a singer. He's pretty good too, actually.
Yeah.
He is.
Wow.
Not as good as the Beatles, though.
No,
Nothing
no,
was
no.
as good as the Beatles. Also joining us from the Pacific Northwest is Michael Markman.
It's me. Hi.
Still in the doctor's office.
Yeah, I'm leaving the best for last, which we have to celebrate his lack of perspective on what's happening. But before we get there, let's talk to Dennis Pombriant. Welcome, Dennis.
They call me Mr. Florida
What does that
or
mean?
Mr. Texas.
Oh, you
I get
mean
them all wrong.
Yeah,
Oh,
you've been posting on the app some of the most incredibly good stuff. Honestly, Dennis, it's you and Michael seem to be dominating the app.
and the app, by
Michael.
the way, is now connected to the Gilmore Gang Twitter feed, so you can see most of what's going on there
Let's go with
in other places. And
the
the Telegram location, if you go to Telegram, well, just click on the link on the screen that you
t.me/Gilmore
got.
Gang.
You could put it up and show it, couldn't you, without it
Yeah.
blowing the whole feed?
No, I don't have to do that. We do that in post. So our final analysis comes to us from this guy with his biggest fan. Where is your fan? Oh, there he is.
Yeah, that fan is awfully blue.
And it's the
Apparently-
amazing Brent Leary. Welcome, Brent. And how were you so wrong?
I will take this one. I don't know if I'm wrong yet. Let's not. I was going to use a term from Pulp Fiction, but I'll stay away from the Mr.
No,
Wetline.
no, let's hear it.
No, I'm not going to say that one. No, I will gladly be wrong. And look, there's this light blue hue that is fallen over the whole state of Georgia. As you
Yeah.
can see, it's entered into my room as well. So
Woo!
Well,
if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
You've got a recount coming, so it'll all change back. Don't worry.
Yeah, well, all of a sudden.
Yeah,
A couple of
if Lindsey,
campaigns, too.
yeah, if Lindsey Graham has anything to say about it,
What just happened to
I don't know, somebody just went away.
Keith?
Keith's
I think he's playing with trying to put something up
Oh,
on
there
the
he is.
screen.
Keith, you know that button you just pushed? Don't do it again, please.
By the way, the county that put Biden over the top in Georgia, Clayton County, it's about 5 miles southwest of me right now.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
All
the
right.
place
And
you were walking around with a vote Trump thing, so you could be right?
Oh, believe me, those signs are still up. And quite honestly, I'm a bit afraid to walk outside. There's some unhappy folk in this neck of the woods. Let's put it like that.
So,
You have open carry there, don't you?
Oh yeah, open carry
That-
of cannons.
Beer.
No. It's not unusual
Firearms.
in that part,
Okay,
not in
so,
that part of Georgia to see people with firearms.
Mike.
Absolutely.
So the thing that I think has surprised a lot of us is the strength that Trump has shown in this election. I'm not kidding.
Yes, it surprised and dismayed me. Just disheartening.
Well, we have talked about the core of Trump's appeal is anti-politicians and anti-politics. It's not just racism and nationalism, although those are big elements as well. It's the FU to the politicians core. And the fact that he got more votes than Obama ever got tells you that there is just an enormous disaffection with traditional politics.
And that's organic. That's organic population growth. You be careful how you use it.
Yeah, and I don't think that the two correlate. The fact that both candidates had the largest number of votes in history.
Yep.
It expresses the mail-in. There was a lot going on here, and it's probably called the virus.
But we shouldn't use either of those two facts to detract from your original question, which is or point, which is that there's something to be understood here.
Yeah, Trump had 5 million more votes this time than he did 4 years ago. He increased his share of the black vote. He increased his share of the Muslim vote. He increased his share of the Hispanic vote, or the Latinx vote. There are some that don't speak Spanish; they speak Portuguese. So there's a lot going on there. It's not just the core that we've all been hearing about. There are new adherents to Trumpism.
But
Well,
Steve, you said how strong he's been. Obviously, what you were talking about was how strong he has shown in the election, as opposed to his sort of attitude, which has been anything but.
Well, luckily, his attitude does not count. So, I mean, it may turn out that some of the legal maneuvering may slow things down, or it might even be catastrophic. Who knows? But what I'm really talking about is just the persistence of his loss is magnified by the closeness of the loss. I mean, he got a lot of votes, and some of it I think is attributable to just incumbency. He had the government behind him in this election, as opposed to his insurgent campaign in 2016. So I don't know the answer to this, obviously, but
No, you said you were surprised, didn't you? You said you were
Well,
surprised that he got all
there are
those
people
votes.
who lived
I'm
through
not.
the last 4 years and then held out their bowl and said, "Please, sir, I want some more."
I'm not surprised though.
Hard to imagine why they would want more.
But I mean, I think that begs the question then: what is his life after the presidency if he continues to play the role that he's playing right now? Because he's still got support, obviously, from Mitch. He's still got support from Lindsey, although there are some defectors out there starting to make some sounds. Esper, all the cabinet members, I think Romney, but all the cabinet members will present the next president with their resignation letters. I'm assuming he'll probably, because I think isn't that something that's done every time? And I think he'll probably just accept all of them. But Esper has done it already. And I mean, so I just wonder how because there's so many stories saying that Trumpism will live and live strongly after he leaves the White House. But how does that happen if he continues to do things like he did at 3:00 this morning?
It's to do with the Republican Party. If he would have lost heavily, it would have started the fracturing and rebirth of whatever the next version of the Republican Party would be. But because he has shown so strongly, it's unlikely that there will be any rebirth or change of the Republican Party, which means that you're looking 4 years from now. Let's say Joe Biden doesn't hit the ball out of the park and there's some level of dissatisfaction that most presidents experience based on inability to deliver due to the political quagmire and so on. You would expect him or someone he nominates to be a strong contender again 4 years from now. And with the Republican Party, pretty much the same thing it is today.
So in other words, he can run again, is what you're saying.
He could run again, or he could choose not to and put someone up as his proxy.
He'll be in jail.
That's unlikely.
Oh, I don't think it's that unlikely.
Number two, I'm looking at a map right now, and what I see is a few Rust Belt states and a lot of natural resources extraction states and agricultural states with tiny electoral vote quotients, and that's not enough to make a party. If you look at what's going on with the Dems, they recaptured manufacturing states in Wisconsin and Michigan. They almost got Ohio. Pennsylvania is still up for grabs, but it's looking pretty good. Nevada and Arizona are trending blue, taking away most of the Southwest from the red party. I predict that when Trump leaves office, he no longer has oxygen, and then the world wants to get away from him and go on to the next thing that has a potential of winning. The thing that he
Republican Party is
fears most
already
for
starting
good
to
reason
fracture.
is that he will be
There's an
seen as
article
the
in
Hang
Slate.
on, one at a time. Finish what you were saying, Dennis, and then Michael.
I think that Trump, the thing that Trump fears most is being seen as a loser, and that's exactly what he'll be seen as.
I was saying that support for him in the Republican Party is already starting to fracture. Slate has an article where they're tracking it. People who are strongly supporting him, people who have moved away, and people who are hedging their bets. So I think you're going to see that continue. But he will. He may not still have his Twitter platform. He gets a certain shield by being in office, but the normal Twitter rules will apply to him once he's out of office.
Yeah, they've already said that they will withhold those rules that they've allowed him. There's already, at least I read that somewhere today. I think one of the big questions, though, is what happened to the down ballot blue wave, and how will that affect the future?
Yeah, and I was going to mention that to Dennis. I mean, if you look at the presidential votes, you see states turning blue, but the Democrats are all concentrated in cities. and the Democrats have not been able to take many state houses. So if you start breaking it down to the county level, the blue states are still red with blue concentrations. So they can win the electoral votes, but they haven't been able to win the state houses.
You're
So
absolutely
gerrymandering will
right.
continue, and reapportionment will still be in the hands of the Republicans after the next census.
There is a fly in the ointment of that argument, and that is that if you turn a state blue, it is because the majority of your population votes blue. In this case, in the presidential, it's true that we haven't flipped any state houses, but the elements are there to make changes. And off-year elections are the ones that focus more heavily on the state houses and the governors.
Well, but look at Pennsylvania as an example. The statewide offices are in Democratic hands. The governor and the Secretary of State are Democrats, but both houses of their legislature are Republicans. They're the ones who set the cockamamie rule that you couldn't even count the mail-in ballots until Election Day, whereas normal states had them all opened and verified and counted before Election Day. So that's part of why we had this charade of Trump leading in Pennsylvania until last night.
I have a question.
Just go back, can I just go back to what Dennis said in terms of the scenario? I think the gap of the win in the states that Biden flipped is small enough that there's a massive pressure on Biden now during the next 4 years to do something that makes him more, not less popular in those states. Because even a small unpopularity would flip it back again. So I think that's a good thing, because I think it means that Biden will have to deliver something to what are mainly poorer families in those states that they feel enthusiastic about. If anything happens where those people feel betrayed or undermined, and I'm remembering my mum voting for Margaret Thatcher after being a Labour supporter all her life because she was so disappointed with Harold Wilson or whoever it was that came before. People really care about their lives. And so I think there's a massive pressure on Biden now to come up with a program of stuff that really makes life better for those people. And I think that's a good thing.
The problem is,
I think you're right.
he can't deliver his program without the Senate. And it's not likely, but still possible, that the Democrats will control the Senate. Whatever Biden wants to do has to be constrained not by the poor people out in the country, by what Mitch McConnell will tolerate.
I think people are hoping for a divided government. I think that's what a large part of Trump's strength in the count is about. I think that Biden's candidacy is based on the idea of crossing the aisle. And I think he's got as good or better chance of doing that than anybody else in the Democratic Party. So I think that, to Keith's point, I think he's going to need to start doing that. But I think he started doing that in the primaries.
I think what he needs to do is go to Detroit and tell the world that we need to build 200 million new electric cars and the infrastructure that supports.
Well, he said that. He said that. He said that in the campaign.
Right, but we need enabling legislation. With that, I think that at least partially answers the whole question of what can he do to bring up the living standards of most of America.
I have a question that may just be because I'm over here and trying to watch the coverage on British television as well as the American television that I get on my Slingbox. The Senate, what's going on with the Senate? There's so many different looks. One company is reporting it as 47-47. Someone else is reporting it as 47 Dem, 48 Republican. I know there's 2 seats that are going to be, they'll go into new elections. And then there's the Kelly seat, which is like kind of ridiculous because he seems to have just won it, but nobody's calling it.
No, I think a few networks have already called it.
Did it? Well,
it was called this morning.
So does that?
Some
So
of the networks.
what does that? I mean, I understand that the president of the Senate, who is the vice president, and will presumably be Harris, will be the one that can vote to break a tie. But if it ends up being one seat over for the Dems, does that not change the leadership structure?
Yes, the party with the majority controls the agenda of the Senate.
Okay, but now we're getting into
if the Democrats get 50 or then they can organize the Senate, and Mitch McConnell can be the majority leader. And I mean, Mitch McConnell becomes the
minority leader,
and Chuck Schumer becomes the majority leader.
Okay, so this is how we get back.
That controls the agenda and the flow of what comes to the floor.
Yeah, but this is now we're getting back into science fiction and Brent's corner, which is what do you think the chances of John Ossoff becoming a actual office holder? I think there's zero.
Well, he underperformed because Biden's winning, and I think last total I saw, Ossoff was behind by more than 100,000 votes or something like that. The only way that the Democrats get the Senate is if they view the people here in Georgia view Mitch McConnell as if he were Donald Trump, and I just don't see that level of hate for Mitch McConnell to drive them out into a special election to vote like they just did here.
So
how about the Reverend Warnock? He came in first, but it was a three-way contest, so he came in first.
20-way contest. It was a 21-way contest, but yeah, he was the big Democrat. I will say this: he might have a chance, but that doesn't mean Ossoff does. There's a drop off. There's not an equivalent enough like of Ossoff that people that will vote for Warnock will automatically vote for Ossoff.
Typically, there's a big drop off in participation when you come to a runoff.
Yeah, that's not
there,
good.
There won't be that many people voting, and all the money in the world is going to flow into Georgia to support the Republican and Democratic candidates.
Well, that's what I was just going to say.
I can't imagine what the media pressure is for any viewer or web user.
I'm going to be getting all sorts of text messages and
radio
emails
and television
and phone calls,
and social media and YouTube and Facebook.
It ain't over for me.
Texts.
See, you guys are good. It's all over for you guys. I'm going to be the one getting 20 text messages a day, several phone calls, some voicemail and email. It's not going to be good. We're going to get just totally killed with this stuff.
Listen, I had an opportunity to have a conversation directly with Kim Kardashian, and I chose not to do it. But
what does that have to do with? What does that have to do with all this?
Those are the phone calls that you get from the candidates. Those are the.
Oh, no. Are you trying to tell me Kim Kardashian is going to start calling me?
I cannot explain Frank saying no to Kim Kardashian. It's beyond
I'm saying,
all
I
rationale.
think Frank
I actually said
recognized
no
it with
to
the Kim Kardashian robocall.
Yeah, that's why I said I recognize that all of those calls were the ones that you were just talking about, Brent. And after I made my first donation, it never stopped. But that's beside the point. The point I was actually going to make was that in a new election for these Senate seats, the ball rolls back to zero and the money all pours back in, and they get a chance to go back in and have an entirely new media campaign across all the platforms. And I thought it was very interesting what you were just saying about, boy, tie your horse to the anti-Mitch McConnell thing, and there's a direction to take in a new media campaign.
Yeah, but is that going to have the same level of outcome as the Trump hate that people had here?
Well, you kind of have to. You have to connect the dots between McConnell and Trump.
Good luck.
I know, but it's Trump. You just hear his voice or hear his name or see his face. Certain percentage of people down here get ill. I mean, that's not the same thing that happens with Mitch McConnell, no matter how much he looks like a turtle. I mean, it's just not that level of hate.
There's going to be two. There is two.
McConnell is one of the Republicans who's backing away from Trump. So it's going to be a little harder to tie him to Trump. McConnell
He's
was a
moonwalking
great
right
engine
now.
for approving judges, but he wasn't a great engine for approving Trump.
There'll be two new variables in January. The first is Biden will be able to make an appeal to the people who are voting to give him the Senate he needs to do what he needs to get done. And then the second is there's always losers' remorse. So some percentage at the fringe of people who voted Republican who lost will not turn out and vote Republican again. And some of them may even vote Democrat.
That's true.
I
I
think
don't
those are
think
two good
that the-
insights, and I have a feeling that Obama will also get into the campaign as well.
I don't think that the movement to try and flip the Senate is the best thing that could happen for Biden. I think that he needs to be able to show that he can work with divided government. Because
And
go ahead.
well, can he work with? There's been a lot of reporting about his relationship in the past with McConnell. Do you think that actually will make a difference?
I think McConnell, to whoever just made that point, is he has already pivoted from supporting. He did this about 3 weeks ago, from supporting Trump to supporting a Senate majority. He'll do whatever he has to maintain that majority, and he's very successful at doing that. So I wouldn't bet against him. Once he's done that, then he has some leverage. I don't think that he's going to have sufficient leverage to avoid an appeal from Biden to, Biden is going to have a bully pulpit to be able to say, hey, Mitch, I'm over here. What are you going to do about this? Are you going to allow this to come to the floor? ...
That's
I
right.
I think that's how he's going to be able to drive, some accommodation on the part of the government to the will of the majority of people. All these issues, we may be divided across certain lines, but I think the ACA is, I don't think the Republicans are going to be able to void the ACA regardless of what the Supreme Court says.
Do you think that it's naive to think that it's even possible that there might be some ability to work across the aisle?
I think on some issues there may be an ability to do that. Infrastructure is one of them.
Infrastructure's been that way since Obama was in office, and they never did it though.
Well,
Yeah, but they're running out of time.
I mean, the other big pressure is going to come on budget. The Republicans are always deficit hawks when a Democrat's in office, and they're all deficit creators when a Republican's in office. So one of the big parts of the Biden agenda is to roll back some of the Trump tax cuts, and I don't think he's going to get a lot of cooperation from
Good
McConnell
luck
on
with that if Mitch is there.
So if you don't roll back the tax cuts, then you've got a budget issue with what you can buy.
But
you either get more money or you do less spending, or you say deficits don't matter.
Let's focus on what's going to happen, not what isn't going to happen. What's going to happen once whatever the noise coming out of Trump's mouth and his team, what happens when he leaves? Regardless of what he says, regardless of whether he has a TV network or not, what's going to happen in terms of the ability for this government to deal with number one, the virus? How do you think that's going to flip? I think it's going to flip very quickly, because I think that there's a broad consensus in this country about we got to fix this problem so that we can get the economy back to work.
I think so. I think that's true. But also based on exit polls, a lot of the Trump support came from people who had a different view of the virus and the economy. Biden has always linked them. Says you first you whack back the infection rate, and then you can open up the economy. Trump said, "Nah, let the infection rate take care of itself. We're going to focus on the economy." Well, Trump voters bought the Trump line. They said, "Yeah, I don't know anybody
but they
who's got
lost.
the COVID, and I don't have the COVID, but
Yeah,
I know
but
I know a lot of people who have kids that can't go to school. I know a lot of people who are out of work. I know a lot of restaurants that are shut." And they said, "Yes, let's open the economy." They didn't see
that
the
was
linkage.
that was Trump running for office. Now
I
Trump,
know, but people bought it. I mean, I'm
So
not
what?
just giving you the
They-
Trump line. I'm giving you the exit poll line.
they buy a lot of things. That doesn't mean that it's going to be operative after January 20th or whenever he actually leaves office. At that point, what's the consensus in this country? Do you think that there's a consensus, even if it's only 85%, to start wearing masks and to do actual complete testing and therefore contact tracing to bring down this surge? I think it's probably 85% of the country is in favor of that, regardless of their political position that's been pushed by. I mean, nobody thinks so, evidently, except me. So good, thank God.
No, I don't disagree with that, Steve. I mean,
Where I live, 100% of the people, well, 90% of the people feel that way. I rarely see anybody without a mask. And when they don't have a mask, it's probably because they forgot and left it in the car. So there's a huge amount of compliance here. I don't see those people who burst into stores and shout and spew saliva in the face of anybody that tries to get them to put a mask on.
Frank should,
But there are places where that's the prevalent behavior.
But the
Frank,
president,
we're
the president
we're
of
in
the
the-
United States is not going to be saying, "Oh, masks are okay, but they're it's not proven." There's not going to be this constant verbiage coming out of the office of the president that basically says it's okay for you to ignore everything that the scientists are saying.
Well,
I mean,
we're
one
in the
of the
middle
things that I
of
think
we're
is
in the middle of a
valuable-
lockdown. Lockdown started here on Thursday, so all of England is locked down. And even before the lockdown, I would say most of England wore masks, except for a handful of idiots. And the lockdown was something that the government said, we're going to lock down. We're going to shut it down. We're going to shut it down starting on Thursday. It's going to last for 30 days. And we're going to give furlough money until March, which is, a lot of money. That's going to be an issue. That's going to be a big budgetary issue if that becomes part of a mandate that's something that Biden probably should do.
And
Well,
Frank,
that'll be interesting to
Frank,
see
it's worth saying
what
that
Mitch's. It will be interesting to see what Mitch says
feeling
about
like
that.
no one can hear me because when I speak.
Yep. Can hear you
No,
now.
Michael can't hear you, but everybody else can.
Okay. I was going to say that Frank should talk about the fighting with the police that's happening in London, because even though he's right, and most people, I think, in the UK want to get rid of the disease and want to do whatever's right, there is quite a big young minority who are taking to the streets and protesting and fighting with the police.
There's a new thing that just started, which is the
Before we
COVID
go to a new
police.
Hey,
The
can you let Michael finish what he was saying, and then
I was just going to say one of the things to look at for McConnell is what he does now with the stimulus package, or does he go back into negotiations with Pelosi? Does he allow the House bill to come to the floor? Does he go into negotiations with Biden? What's McConnell, because he has just not done anything about the stimulus, and I think to some extent that supported Trump in making this a binary choice between either you fight the virus or you open the economy. If you give people support, then shutting down the economy is less onerous. If you give people unemployment support, if you give businesses support, they don't have to go out of business. They can just shut down and take some government money for a few months.
Frank.
Well, yes, they can, which is what England is trying to do: shut down, take some government money. But Keith makes a good point, which I think it may have just been yesterday when all of a sudden there were these COVID police that started going around to checking into the places of business to make sure that they are not congregating, and then fining them and pulling them out. I mean, it doesn't feel yet like China when they dragged people off the streets and threw them into trucks, but there is definite and anti-police action there going on with young people in England, and that seems to be directly against the lockdown. But I think, I'm not surprised by that, but I think that's a minority. I really do. I think, look, I think a lot of the issues that people have are based on the impressions that they got from the way the media covered all these stories. There's an awful lot of imagery out there that is not indicative of the majority. That imagery is indicative of what here as a media guy, I'm, if it bleeds, it leads. I want to put the most action kind of stuff on the air, that sort of thing. I get that, but it's also inflammatory.
Yeah, well, it's going to have to be handled delicately, because on the one hand, you need, in the UK, they call it a circuit breaker. Basically, 4 weeks of total lockdown leads to reducing the virus down to the embers. And if it's done properly, you can open back up again quite quickly without a new wave. So that circuit breaker concept requires national policy and national implementation. It can't be local. It can't be patchwork. It has to be everywhere.
Well, and there's also the testing part of it, where there's an experiment going on right now. I want to say it's in Liverpool, where the entire city is going to be tested. And if they can accomplish that, that can become a model for greater testing. So, yes, as soon as you have greater testing, you'll see that there are more cases. One does not mean the other. So that it feels to me like there's a path to go down, and there's models to look at that aren't as extreme as what China went through. But of course, look at what happened in China. They went through major extreme and shut it down. England went through a minor extreme, unlike America, which went through no extreme, and got it under control. And then it came back, and it came back worse. And that's why they shut it down. And now they're doing this testing experiment. So I think that they're giving out money. So I think there's models that can be looked at. I think that's not I don't want to say it's the model to look at, but I think it's something that is going to make smart people go, that's kind of interesting. Let's see if that works.
China successfully contained it to 1 or 2 cities. I mean, it was amazing, actually. Obviously, Singapore, which I think of Singapore and China as structurally quite similar, single party government, capitalist economy, ability to enforce from the top. Singapore also did it. So it really needs national, enforceable national policy.
Indeed.
I think what you'll likely see is that rather than trying to stuff a $3 trillion omnibus bill down the throats of Congress, Nancy and Mitch will come together and put together a series of smaller bills, much smaller bills. So they'll focus on PPP, for example, for small businesses and all the rest of that. There will probably be a bill to fix the ACA so that people with pre-existing conditions can continue to afford to buy insurance. And there'll probably be 1 or 2 other things, maybe the beginnings of infrastructure bills. All of that together will become known as Biden's first 100 days.
Do you think that
and then Mitch clamps down?
Do you think that a lot of, because much of what you just said could have happened under Trump, but didn't? I wonder if how much of it that didn't happen under Trump didn't happen because of Trump.
All of it.
Oh, quite a bit. Quite a bit.
He was running for president. He's
Trump-
not running for president anymore. That's
You
all.
have to remember Trump
But I
is
mean,
lazy, and he
even
won't
back-
fight for anything other than himself.
Yes, and even back way before he was running, although you could make the argument that he's been running for president since he came down the escalator.
No, I'm talking
this-
about
I
as
think
president,
1983.
he's been running for president. He announced his reelection campaign on Inauguration Day.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. He's been
But
running
he-
for president ever since
but
he's
he-
been the president.
But it's pretty clear that he's just lost the election.
Yeah.
Okay, so
But my point wasn't
he
that.
has less motivation to try and stir the pot over and over again, except for his own personal brand, which is why I don't think that Trump TV is going to be worth anything. I think it's going to get blown
how
away
much-
by Fox.
How much pot stirring can and will he do between now and Inauguration Day? And I say can because is there anything or anyone or any group out there that will be able to say to him that he might listen to? Let's not be stirring the pot so much between now and Inauguration Day. I just that's
All right,
something
so-
that
Well,
bothers me.
he's got two things that he's already entertaining. One is firing people. He has a list of people that just haven't performed loyally enough to him. He wants to get rid of Wray, for instance, at the FBI. So he's going to do that. And then he's got a long list of cronies to pardon. So I think that's going to keep him pretty busy.
Well, I think that's good that he's going to be kept busy.
Right,
You know, I think there's a concern about what's going to happen with, you know, the legal challenges, in the sense that I think everybody's, you know, paranoid, particularly the media, about him taking something or anything to the Supreme Court. But I think he may be in for a surprise there, because unlike him, Amy Coney, what's her name?
Coney
Barrett,
Barrett.
Amy Comey Barrett.
She has a lifetime job, and he doesn't.
Well, there was a wonderful story that I think was in the New York Times when the election started turning south. Kushner said, "We've got to go find a Baker-like character to run our appeals."
Right.
And of course, they wound up with Rudy Giuliani, who's very much not a James Baker-like figure, but the actual James Baker weighed in and said, "Oh, for God's sake, count all the votes." So the amount of support there is for, I mean, frankly, you've got 5 states now that he has to deal with, whereas in that case, it was just Florida, and it was just one part of Florida, and it was a tiny margin of a few hundred votes. That's something
CNN
you
is
can
just
challenge,
announcing
you know,
that the
to
GOP.
go into Georgia and Pennsylvania and Arizona and Nevada and Wisconsin.
What is CNN?
Where you've got margins of tens of thousands of votes. They've got nothing.
Mike can't hear me. CNN is just announcing that the GOP is asking the Supreme Court to block late votes in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and that'll be what, 300,000 votes or something?
Well, they'll say no anyway.
Of which 50% are for Trump.
They're going to say no
in
anyway.
Pennsylvania, that's the margin. That's the margin, because those are the votes that were mailed in by Democrats early, but not counted till after Election Day. So without those votes, Trump gets Pennsylvania. And
But
But Keith's right. They're going to say no.
The Supreme
gonna
Court
say
will
no.
say no because he's insulted the Supreme Court already by acting as if it's his Supreme Court, not our Supreme Court. That if I was them, I would want to prove I'm not in his pocket.
No, you
Yeah,
know
it
what?
was-
The Supreme Court could easily
Yeah,
say that they don't
except-
have any role yet, because the Supreme Court could easily say they don't have any role in this, simply because vote counting is going on and everything so far has been done by the book. So Trump doesn't really have a case. A more direct answer for Michael, though, is here's a headline from CNN. Sources close to the White House say some officials are beginning to quietly back away from Trump. He's a lame duck all of a sudden. Lame duck has meaning. The power is draining away from him. He's not going to be able to do a whole lot of serious damage to the Republic between now and January 20th.
Power was draining
I didn't
away
read it,
from
but
him.
there was a White House statement this morning that it was, you know, he had a deranged statement late last night that all the networks cut away from because it was just so preposterous. But they put out a much more subdued statement this morning, which makes me think that somebody threw a net over him between last night.
You know, but Michael and Dennis, I think that yes, the power is draining away from him. But that incident that occurred last night, I actually got up and saw that, was really indicative of the kind of power being drained away from him that I think he feels is the most important power that he has, which is the power of communication. And the communication in that instance was stopped and it was taken away from him. And I think that is the kind of power draining away from him that's going to be it's going to be the thing that's the most important for him.
Totally.
Anyway.
I mean, even before last night, Heather Cox Richardson in her newsletter yesterday said you can watch how he's losing his ability to control the narrative, and dominate the conversation. People are just
that was the story that you
attention to him that they used to, and
that was the story that you posted that story yesterday. I thought that was probably one of the most important stories of the day, by the way. And I actually came back on that one and said, you know, one of the things that I noticed, and this is not to put on the brakes and make a hard left turn, but it kind of plays into that same arena, was, you know, if you looking at the protesters out there right now, you've got a party going on one hand and protests going on the other hand, and it's like the whole scene has flipped. That the party that's going on is not the Republicans who were partying early on because of the day of vote. It's the Democrats who are partying, and it's the Republicans who are out there demonstrating, and they're not even very good demonstrators. By the way, I think Dennis, you commented on my note on that one, saying, yeah, because they're being paid to demonstrate.
Right. Nothing says I don't know what I'm doing, like I've just been recruited out of the Union Hall or wherever. Yeah.
Branch, you're being very quiet. I want to hear some more from you because you have to leave in about 10 minutes.
5 minutes. I mean, what? I don't know.
I know you don't have a lot to say because you were wrong.
Right? and I'm glad to be, actually. No, I think we're talking ourselves into circles here. I mean, some of this stuff it's kind of easy to explain. You know, he's still dangerous because he hates Obama so much. He would love to be able to find a way to just get that last dig into the Affordable Care Act, if at all possible. And he's willing to take any and all of us down with him. So whatever little power he still has, believe me, he will use it for the bad. He's not going to be like, oh, well, I guess I lost, so I'm gonna go out and try to.
Yeah, I agree with you, but what little power he has left is diminishing his ability to do anything that's actually going to be dangerous.
Well, no, because he's still got 70 million people voted for him. He could still incite these people to do all sorts of treacherous things. I mean, you already saw what was going on at some of these places, these ballot places. I mean, they were in Arizona. They were surrounding, the building, talking about stop the count or keep counting. One place he's telling them to stop the count. The other place he's telling them to keep counting, and they're doing whatever he says.
Yeah,
so that's him wanting to eat both. He wants his cake and he wants to eat it too. The other point about that, though, Brent, to me, is that's like 5 or 6 places where he's got that going on, and the way that people make a movement work is to have it be national. And I don't think that there's going to be any national movement to support whatever it is that he tries to do. And I think that's going to be like the searing problem that he's going to have to deal with.
All you have to really
I hope.
all you really have to do is to watch what he is trying to stop, to see where he's hemorrhaging power. And there was an interesting comment this morning, apparently, from Lindsey Graham, which was, the net of it was, whatever, if you've got any real data to support these charges, you've got about 48 hours to come up with it.
Steve said something, I think, toward the beginning of this that I think we should pay more attention to. The spotlight now moves to Biden. Biden's going to make a major address tonight. And people will be asking Biden day by day, what's he going to do? And I think he's going to have the next couple months very well stage managed in terms of appointing a cabinet, in terms of announcing programs, in terms of holding the spotlight and keeping the microphone. Trump becomes less and less important, and Biden's the one that people are going to be wondering about. And he's the one that's going to control the narrative.
Once the votes are counted, Trump has no power.
Yeah, but guys, that might be true. But what little power, or what little stagecraft he has, he will use it and try to go down slinging. And there's going to be enough people. It might not be the masses of the 70 million people that voted for him, but there's look. I live in a place where I'm fully expecting to see some blowback on what's taking place. There's enough of those kind of people around to cause all sorts of damage and havoc.
I totally.
That's why.
But
that's why I was asking the question:
is it going to change the results of this election, and who's going to be in the office on January 21st? I don't think it will.
I'm not even talking about changing the results of the election. I'm talking about going out swinging, taking as many people down as he can.
That was my point. Between now and January 20th, that was the question I was asking. What is he going to do, and what can he get away with?
I don't think he will, Brent, because I think he would have done if it was a more serious defeat. But the fact that he got so close means that he thinks he's got a second life. So he's going to play this for that second life, not for the end of the first life.
He's going to be just like he was leading up to. He's going to be the biggest troll and heel there ever has been now, because he was batting up on Obama. He's going to kill Biden as any little thing he can make up, because we all know it's not as to be true. He's going to go all crazy. He's going to.
I agree with that.
Yes,
I agree with that,
will.
but
the question is, who's going to be paying attention to him?
He's going to have his own TV.
He's got his cult, which is focused on him. Right. But up to now, people who are outside the cult felt compelled to deal with him.
I disagree.
This is going to sound funny.
People who were not Trump supporters kept retweeting Trump's tweets to see, look how bad he is. Look what horrible thing he said this morning. This is preposterous. Look, he spelled that word wrong. He put a capital where he shouldn't have put it.
All right, we're going to have enough time to be able to disagree with Brent when he goes to his other show. So I just thank you very much for being here. I agree with you that the current occupant is likely to try and do the most damage that he possibly can. I'm hopeful that that's not a lot of damage.
I'm hopeful too, but just think of this, and then I'll leave you fine people to continue this. As bad as he acted in all the stupid and crazy and dangerous things he said as a president, there were people that actually was restraining him to keep to that level. What do you think is going to happen when there's absolutely no constraints of being the president and being muzzled to a certain extent? He is going to go crazy.
Launch nukes? Do you think he'll launch nukes?
He doesn't even verbal nukes, if you want to call it that. He's going to be able to incite all sorts of people to do crazy. I mean, look at what all that right-wing media has done to this point.
Well, look, the thing is, Brent,
he's going to be bigger than Limbaugh.
He needs the media, not just the right-wing media. He needs the media to help foment all of this dissension, whatever that word is. He needs the media to do that. It now becomes incumbent upon the media to make some decisions about how they present what's left of the time between now and the 20th. And the beginning of that was last night.
Yeah, and just remember that Trump TV is going to be a competitor of those networks. It's not going to go well for Trump TV.
Hey
I hope
guys,
so. Anyway.
1992.
Bye, Brent. Bye, Brent.
Bye,
Thank
Brent.
you.
See
See
ya.
you next time.
Chow mein.
Yeah.
Oh,
1992.
I forgot to thank Brent for being wrong. That's a very important.
Well,
Anyway,
I couldn't hear either of you because you both talked at the same time.
I said I forgot to thank Brent for being wrong.
Well, that's all right. I have a text from him several days ago where we discussed, I said, wouldn't it be ironic if your state is the one that proves that you were wrong? And he said, I can live with that.
that's because he's a cool guy, so he can live with it. Yeah, you're right.
It's a lot harder for me to live with my error of believing there was going to be a landslide than it would be for him.
I know, but
Yeah, but
luckily,
you're
every
not
time
alone.
I said that, I said, no way.
Well,
So as a group effort, that was somewhat muted.
So as an exercise in proving I can learn from my mistakes, I now want to acknowledge that Trump did get 69 million votes so far.
Oh,
And
this
so
is my way of saying that you were wrong is that you were right.
No, I'm now moving forward, having quickly gone through all the stages of grief, denial, and acceptance to acceptance, and making the point that he got 69 million votes, which is a substantive basis for whatever happens next. I mean, it is a phenomenally large number, and it means that there are 69 million people who prefer Trump to Biden, which is astounding but true. And those people ain't going anywhere. And Biden has to deal with them, but Trump will leverage them somehow. He will. I don't know how.
Dennis, do you agree with that?
I think Keith's a real bright guy, but no.
Okay, and then we're going to follow that with some data.
Well, look.
Why do you say that?
Here's the thing. Trump's got 69 voters in this election, but they are now locked in amber like some ancient mosquito. Biden has the ability to move the country forward, and the more successful he is, the more he's going to chip away at Trump's legacy, or whatever you want to call it. The other thing I'd say is pursuant to what I said before, that Trump is lazy, and we know he's very lazy. He's not going to start Trump Network. It's just not going to happen. He's going to be a minor fixture in Fox. They're going to make a big deal out of it to fluff his feathers, but that's where he's going to be perched until Cyrus Vance Jr. comes after him in the city of New York, or the state of New York.
I think there's something else to be said for the number of people who voted for Trump. They weren't all voting for Trump. Some of them were voting because they are Republicans and will vote for the Republican candidate. Some people were definitely in his cult and were very strong, and probably are still very strongly wedded to whatever it is that he presents. But a lot of the people who wound up voting for him were not really voting for him. They were voting for their team, and their team still exists without him.
I think that's what happened with the Senate. Actually, that was my sense of it, was that they hit the ticket button and it went all the way down that one column, and that's why the Senate didn't get that blue wave that it expected to get, including the fact that there were so many pickups on the House side. Granted, those were, interestingly enough, most of them were women, I think, which is a good thing. But I just think that a lot of people were voting down the ticket.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the the Senate issue shows the concern and fear of Republicans about Trump's strength post-election. Because I think it's going to be, to Keith's point, I think it's going to be substantial, his ability relative to the rest of the Republican Party to be able to dominate how the party unwinds from Trumpism.
Well,
And I
the
think
next thing
they're
the
gonna have
party
a
has
hard
to
time
solve
doing
is the 22 election, where Trump can't be running. So do they run in 22 as part of the Trump restoration, or do they find another path?
You know, I think that kind of off of what you were just saying there, though, Steve, I'm not sure that they're going to unwind from Trumpism. Do we think that that's actually going to happen? I don't think so. I think that
I don't think
Trumpism
so
is.
either.
I think it's Trumpism is there. It's a fact of life. And I just
agree with you. I agree with you. I think that never Trumpers are still going to have a tough time. But
they're going to double down on racism, nationalism, finger pointing. If there's economic difficulties in the next 4 years, which there will be, they'll use that to fuel all of the things they've fueled before. And we may even end up with what comes after Trump, which would be worse than Trump.
I think you're right. If all of that comes to pass, though, the other party has nothing to hang its hat on other than a bunch of negativity. What you're suggesting is that this party is imploding from being a national party to being a local grievance party.
A party of protest. But if you can go from 69 million to 74 million protesters, which can happen if some of those 74 million become disaffected, you get a 1933 Germany situation where Hitler's popular and gets elected.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that's kind of where we were earlier on this year.
Well, in 1933, Franklin Roosevelt got elected over here.
And I might be wrong about Hitler in 33. I think I'm right, but it could have been 36. But there was a lot that went on between 33 and 36.
No, you're right.
He took a very small country with a huge economic problem and turned them into a gigantic powerhouse that almost took over the world.
Okay.
There is that.
And I'm
Which
not,
one were you talking about, Roosevelt or Hitler?
I was talking about Trump.
Actually, Roosevelt was the successful version.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he
exactly.
built people up. He had empathy, and he put programs in place that worked for the average person.
If you are ever so inclined, Dennis, if you study history of Iran between Mossadegh and the first Shah, it was all about American empire taking over from the British.
Yes.
Well, we
Gosh,
know that
don't get me
we understand that.
Don't get me started on that. Don't started on that.
Let's
Keith.
get started on that. So what I'm basically saying is that if Biden is successful at bringing down new cases in the virus, the concern of 74 million or a percentage of 74 million joining the grievance party, I think, is overstated.
Yeah, the thing you got to consider here is that Biden has the very good fortune of starting from an incredibly low level. Nothing works. Nothing works right now. And all he's going to do is make some incremental improvements.
If he can just avoid peeing on the toilet floor, he's winning.
Wow.
But the virus is going to be much more rampant by the time he takes over. We're at 100,000 cases a day, above 100,000 cases a day. It will be 150 or maybe 200 by the time he takes over, and the death rate will be climbing. It's going to be a really, it's going to be much harder to suppress the virus on January 20th than it is today.
You know, I think
And he may have to rehire Fauci.
Oh, he said he would do that. He's promised to do
Yeah.
that. He said that's his first call is to Fauci.
we may be overestimating the canvas being dominated by the virus, which it clearly is for the next year. But I think if you're looking out over 4 years, the canvas is going to be dominated by economics, probably not by cultural issues anymore, hopefully, but economics. And the US is at a time in its history where it has to fight to maintain its position, especially in manufacturing, raw materials, agriculture, and
Energy.
those are real things. And you know, something like Keynesian, clean energy program that Biden talks about on a massive scale, something like that is going to be needed. Whether it's
You know,
that,
I think you're right.
again, feeling naive, have a sense that that there will be a lot of really good, smart professionals that will come in and help solve these problems, as opposed to an economic leader who was a second-rate guy on CNBC running his budget. I mean, come on. There's got to be some really good, smart people out there that will be brought in that will help look 4 years down the road and create a plan that will make some sense.
Well,
I'm not an
there's no
economist,
question
but
of
I
that,
play
Frank.
one in
He's already
government.
building that team. That team is already
Yeah.
being assembled. It's not something he's going to start doing. It's something he started doing months ago.
Well, I think
What he's going to do is start announcing them, and
Our
that's
Yes.
part of what's going
Yeah.
to occupy
Our
the news over
producer.
the next month and a half.
Our producer wants me to bring up the subject of how come the polls were so bad.
Ooh, good question. The polls. Did you see that Frank Luntz quote? I posted it. I think
Yes.
I posted it on the. Frank Luntz his life has been all about polls. Has basically sounded the death knell for pollsters from this point forward. Now, there were a few people who chimed in on that post that I made that said, the polls have always been questionable. It's, my reply to that was, it's not so much that polls are a bad thing. What is a bad thing is that the way the polls are done. And I'm not smart enough to know how to change that. But the way the polls.
I think,
Go ahead.
Frank, it's as the people polarize and become more ideological, they're less inclined to tell the truth because they have a political agenda that's conscious in their brain, and they see the pollsters as part of the framework they're against.
Yeah.
So I think it's a function of a polarized society that polls just don't work.
So I think it's two.
Joe
I think it's
Scarborough
that.
said something apt this morning. He said it's like Baywatch. Do you know anybody who will admit they watched Baywatch? And it was one of the highest rated shows on TV in its day.
I watched it.
I never saw it.
Let me offer you a slightly different interpretation of that. What we have going on in political polling right now is the reverse of what we've seen in weather forecasting over the last 30 years. Over the last 30 years, weather forecasting has gotten to be incredibly good, such that I can tell you what the weather's going to be next Friday, a week from today, and it's pretty accurate. The reason weather forecasting got better is because we collected a lot more data and we applied analytics to it. What's missing in politics right now is sufficient data. We have the analytics, and we're using old-fashioned techniques to gather the data. We call people up and say, you want to take a survey for the New York Times? And they go, no. And so they talk to whoever they get instead of being more scientific. Thank you.
No, it's not quite whoever they get. There's a problem in constructing the panel that you survey, because you want to have, it's not going to be a random panel. They always put up criteria. You want to get so many in this age group, so many in that age group. You want to get so many in this geography, in that geography. You want to get so many Democrats, so many Republicans. And what you're trying to do is model the universe of people who will actually cast ballots. but you never know who the universe of people who will actually cast ballots will be. I mean, how do you determine a likely voter? Is it because they voted last year? Is it because they tell you they're going to vote? A lot more people came out to vote this year than came out before. So all of the polling modeling that had to do with last year's or last cycle's election was a little bit off because the electorate was engaged in a different way. It's a really tough problem to do
Yeah.
if you're going to rely on a small sample. I think what Dennis said is really apt. You know, if you can possibly get a large sample, a representative sample, I mean, the kind of data that we have now for weather is amazing. We get 3-dimensional data of the atmosphere, not just 2-dimensional data. There's just a lot that we know.
So the
Yeah.
mail-in ballots, I think, are the ones that are most stressing this out. And interestingly, what's happened in the post-election phase, if you look at what Steve, whatever his name is,
Kornacki?
Karnacki, and also the guy John King on CNN,
They were great.
these guys are actually modeling out what the vote that hasn't come in yet is going to be. And in terms of the mail vote, they're like, it's uncanny. They're saying 69 to 73% are going to go for Biden. And every single time they're right. What is that? That's a exit poll? I mean, how are they deriving this? They don't have the data, but
Well, they do have data.
Yeah, they
have data because
do,
In a particular county, you know what the registration is of Democrats and Republicans, and you expect a certain homogeneity within that county. So you start opening and counting the ballots at random. You can extrapolate within that county. That's how they do it.
I have an inherent problem.
It goes against this idea that polling is inaccurate. However, the more that the elections turn digital, the more accurate the existing data is, and the only issue is going to be the access to that data. And the networks have got really good access right now to that data. So the more that we go to a mail-in model, the more that the polls are going to be reflective for the future.
I did find it curious. I'm a database guy for 40 years. I'd love to understand the databases that the networks are sitting on top of and how they can drill down into a county and get real-time scores, from I actually don't know the database structures and the layers, but it's fascinating. And it does imply that you could ultimately move to smartphone voting.
I was just thinking that and I'm sorry to interrupt. That's exactly what I've been thinking about, Keith. And I wanted to ask that question because, I bring up smartphone voting and a lot of smart people will say to me, well, that can't work because of security and this and that and the other thing. I can make a secure message to my bank. Although it's not that easy to actually do, I can actually make a secure message to my bank that my bank will then deal with that includes all sorts of data and information. So is it an issue of not being able to do it because it's insecure, or is it an issue because you can do it and make it secure, but it's too complicated? That's one question. And the other thing is I have an inherent problem with any kind of data gathering that resembles the Nielsen's. That's just me.
So firstly, technically speaking, it's entirely doable. You can have end-to-end encryption. You can have identity checks. You can use blockchain to make sure votes can't be duplicated more than once, blah, blah, blah. It's completely doable, but the system isn't run by technologists who understand all of that. So there's natural skepticism. That's probably the first biggest enemy is skepticism and fear driven by lack of knowledge.
Well, there's something else too. You need people to have capable smartphones.
Well,
and that's getting close to universal, but it's not universal.
You don't need it. You could have a smartphone in every store that would be usable by a voter who could prove that they were who they say they are.
Which you could do with fingerprint or face analysis or something like that.
It's completely
Well,
doable.
there-
So the only thing that
So I
prevents
think that, but there's going to be some resistance to having that kind of biometric identification publicly. One of the reasons that
Yeah.
Apple can do it is because they tell you that the biometrics are securely locked into a secure chip on your own phone,
Yeah.
and all that gets transmitted is the fact that you are you, but your face doesn't get transmitted, and your
Yeah,
fingerprint doesn't get transmitted.
The negotiation is going to be about access to that information, not about the availability of it.
But does anybody doubt that some number of decades from now, that's where we end up? I mean, it seems inevitable.
Yeah,
think-
I agree. I think
I think given contact tracing and where that's going to go, it's not only inevitable, but it's going to happen a lot faster than
I
people.
mean, but there's a step before that, which is universal mail-in ballots. 5 states have it. My state has it. It works very well. It's cheaper than running polls. It's more secure. It's more convenient, and it gives you a paper trail.
So, you know,
yeah, but it still puts the pollsters out of work, though, doesn't it?
there'd be a way to do that.
It puts the little old ladies out of work. You still need an infrastructure to count the ballots. You've got to open
Yeah,
them
but I'm
and match
talking
the
about-
signatures and so forth.
I'm talking about the polls that happened before the elections.
Oh, well, I know people will still have those because you,
There'd even be a way to do that. You know, your credit card these days has two things. It has a chip and it has NFC. So you can now hover your credit card over the cash terminal
Right.
and it. So it'd be totally easy.
NFC.
NFC.
What is it? Oh, NFC. Thank you.
So it would be completely easy to vote and to store the results of your vote on a card with a chip and have that chip waved over a terminal to receive your vote. So that would be a digital mail-in. It's like mail-in, but it's digital. And then the counting would happen automatically without needing counters.
right.
Aren't they doing that in Estonia right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are models out there. And in Estonia, the model is everyone carries that card. Crickets.
Okay.
This reminds me of when I was in New York in 1996, and I showed my friends my UK phone, and they said, "What's SMS?"
Good question.
Remember when there was no SMS here?
Yeah. Well, remember that here in the UK, you also had teletext, which had yet to even come anywhere near the US at the time, and that was in the 80s.
And
well,
there were years when Europeans had chips in their credit cards and Americans didn't.
Yeah.
Go back even further. France had Minitel, which was teletext on your phone. French homes didn't have yellow pages. They had a keyboard and a terminal back in the 70s.
Yes.
Dennis, any thoughts before we wind this down?
The France wide web.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm just relieved that this week's almost over and that we can see the horizon again.
Well, I think that's optimistic, but out here at the edge of the Pacific, I can see the horizon. I just can't see well enough to see what's actually going on.
Well, for those listeners who don't know, the Pacific Ocean in California is freezing cold. However, I spent last weekend in Santa Cruz and it was warm enough to swim in just with swimming trunks. So that was a signal to me. The world is changing in a good way.
Be careful.
Well, let's not forget that the horizon is that line that you can see, but you can never reach. Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm not letting you leave that as your final thoughts here. So I'll go to Michael Markman. Any level setting here as we wind down?
No, I'm happy with the presidential level. I'm very disappointed in the size of, things that we've all said, size of the Trump vote, and the Senate. I really expected a few more to flip.
Frank?
As I was saying earlier about the sort of the confusing issue here in the UK, the news that I'm gathering. I'm now looking at a CNN chart that says that there are 48 Democrat senators, and I say Democrat senators, and 47 Republicans. I'm not sure where that number came from, but that's the first time that I've seen that number. I don't know what that is, if that is significant or not, but
yeah, I think that reflects Harris being called, but there's still some that haven't been called, but Republicans are leading in them. And then there are the two that are going to run off.
Apparently, there's 2 independents as well. Who are they?
Well, the independents the independents, so far as I know, caucus with the Democrats. So they're added in the Democrat column.
Because King and Bernie Sanders.
But they weren't up this year, so I don't know who the others are. Well, yeah, they weren't up, but they
still count.
they're the guys, right? King in Maine and Sanders in Vermont.
Okay.
well,
Keith,
so there's a slim chance that the Democrats could still prevail in the Senate, I suppose.
There is that chance, and a lot
Don't
of attention is going to be focused on Georgia. So
never bet against Mitch.
My final comment is I'm glad Brent was wrong, and I'm sad I was wrong. And that's not me being self-serving. I just would have preferred my outcome.
Well, it was a landslide on both sides of the valley, wasn't it? Yeah. Gosh, that's 2 of those really bizarre things that I've come up with at the last minute here.
Remind me of the other one, because I've already forgotten it.
That was the horizon that you could see, but you could never reach.
Oh.
And then the other one is the landslides on both sides of the valley.
I think that there's new ground broken with the landslides on both sides.
Thank you.
Yeah. The other one, not so much. And that's what I think.
Yeah,
All right.
okay.
I want to thank our.
Well, wait a minute. Dennis didn't say anything. Dennis had a chance to say something. Come on.
No, he did. He was the
Well,
first to say something.
I said I was glad to see the horizon again.
That's right. That's right. That sort of pushed me in.
I think it's like 76 days till Biden gets sworn in. The other night I said I'm going to bed. I like where we are, and somebody said, "Oh, you're a brave man." I like where we are. I think change happens gradually. It doesn't happen like a tsunami very frequently. The Democrats gave back some seats in the House this time. That's within parameters, I think, and I think we underestimate right now the enormity of turning back Trump and putting a Democrat in the White House. That was significant, even discounting how many people voted for Trump and everything else. A couple of months ago, I said Trump would get about 200 electoral votes. He's got 214 right now.
Change is less like a tsunami and more like a ripple in a pond.
By the way,
Well, if you're an ant,
based on closeness, what are the rules regarding who has the right to demand a recount?
it goes by
50%.
state.
In the states where it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. In the states where it does matter, it's 100 votes either way.
Okay.
Yeah, some states have automatic triggers, some don't.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
but,
there
the
are
results-
different thresholds. So there's an automatic trigger at one point. You can request one and have the state pay for it at another point. And then if it's beyond that point, you can request one and you have to pay for it.
Got it.
Well, my thoughts are that it's pretty amazing how the Biden campaign had 3 targets: Michigan, Wisconsin, and
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. Yeah, and I think that their persistence of vision is really extraordinary in terms of modern presidential election politics. I've never seen such a steady hand on the wheel, and boy, sure we sure do need it right now. So I'm pretty optimistic.
Yay.
I want to thank our producer and director, Tina Chase Gilmore.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to
Hoorah,
thank, starting with the recently departed to Sports World, Brent Leary. Thank you, Brent.
Yay.
And I'll remind you that he never said that he thought Trump was going to win. He said he was afraid Trump was going to win. I think he's still afraid that Trump's going to win.
Yeah.
I want to thank Dennis Pombriant.
Mr. Florida.
You need to get over that too. I mean, if you're really, optimistic, which I think you are, Florida never goes to the Democrats.
Hey,
What else is it?
Florida is this day only. It's my attempt to wear sackcloth and ashes, and next week, forget about it.
Oh, excellent. That's meaningful kind of sentiment that you're expressing there. I want to thank Frank Radis in London.
Thank you for having me. Gangsters, it's always a pleasure.
I want to thank Michael Markman in the Seattle area.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
He's looking around his virtual room.
No, no, actually, I have a window on this side. And I always check when you say Seattle. I always check to see if it's raining.
And what's the verdict?
It's not raining now, but it is overcast.
And the amazing Keith Tier.
Thank you, Keith.
I don't know about the amazing word. That's that flatters me.
Well, I don't know. Deal with it. The amazing Keith Tier. Try it again.
Yay.
I agree. I agree.
Here,
All
here.
right. Thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Okay.
Okay, and
And we're up.
Stream